Hi, I'm Rigger, this is your Ryan. Today let's do a little comprehensive discussion about the candidates who could be in the Hound. Before we start, be sure to like the video if you like it, share if you think others would like it too, let me know what you think in the comments down below and subscribe for more. Also, before we get too deep, I did a version of this without spoilers for Chapter 6, but it's a lot more fun with them, so there's your warning, spoilers, Volume 8, Chapter 6. If you've seen that episode, you probably know what I'm going to say, but I couldn't do this list justice and not include it now we've seen it. So yeah, I wanted to discuss all of the options of who could be in the Hound. First off, I'll say this isn't because it has to be someone. I do think there's a person there, but if you don't, that's fine. But let's just operate under the assumption there is and discuss all our options to see where we stand. Not really predict who it is, but let's focus more on what each candidate would mean. We'll look at how likely it is from a dramatic standpoint and a logic standpoint, and see what each candidate would mean for the show. Real quick, what I mean by all this is to say that if there is a person in there, this is a show, so you want the dramatic reveal. It doesn't work if it peels down and you don't know the person, but we'll discuss that as we go through the candidates. First up, I just wanted to put out some real fun people that can't be in there, but I just wanted them on this list because it would have been fun. Those are Clover, Tok, and Raven. Basically just because they're characters we know. Clover, we've seen the body back with Ironwood, we know what it is, but if it was Clover in there, if he'd been left out on the ice for whatever reason, that would have been fun, but obviously isn't the case. Next is Tok. Yeah, she got decapitated. Cut to black or not, that's decapitation, that's what they're showing. I only put it here because it's a face we know, and it's someone possibly connected to Salem. It isn't a satisfying reveal if you were being underwhelming about it sort of thing, you know, if it was her, it's not really that great, but it would be a fun cameo. I'm just mentioning all the candidates to put here that'd be fun in like an Easter egg sort of way, but that's not really worth the reveal. And last of that bunch, yeah, is Raven. Basically, there's almost no way. There'd be no point in it being Raven. That being off-screen would feel really cheap, and it's unlikely she'd have maiden powers around to use as the host for this. But if it was, it would be actually really fun to reveal to Cinder. If you want Cinder to realize how little Salem cares, providing what she promised her and all that, you have a maiden in there, because she really only cares if Cinder gets the powers to open the vaults. It's not actually that she cares about Cinder getting powers. If that was the case, that would be a really fun way to do it, of having Raven and those maiden powers right there this whole time and not having given them to her because she doesn't really need Cinder to have them. You know, considering that vault's already been opened and that relic's already out in the world kind of thing. That's the only kind of route I think would work for that reveal. And putting it to Yang to rescue her mum would be fun, but it's not really worth it narratively again, and it seems unlikely, and perhaps Salem does want Cinder to get those powers for more than that reason, who knows. And also, yeah, with Raven's fighting skill and the powers, that sort of fight and her being captured being off screen would feel really lame, but I just wanted to put him in here anyway. Next up, we'll go on to the very much weakest options. These are people I almost wouldn't include, but we're doing everyone, so let's do everyone. By which I mean, these are people we don't really know, people we don't really have faces for even. You can't really do these because when that goop rolls down to reveal a face, you need it to be a face we know. Therefore, I'm just going to lift off, stupid stuff like Heather Shields and Shiro Wan are just names we know, both missing, whatever, it's not them. But one I did want to say is Marcus Black. It'd be fun for Mercury's development, and maybe Salem could win his undying loyalty by making Marcus, who's still somehow half alive, give him his semblance back, but that'd be about it. Again, there's no reason to have sent someone out to get that body of the random assassin that Cinder was working for her side plan, in the chance that that guy isn't dead, so it's not happening. But it's a fun, if you're invested in Mercury kind of story. If Mercury got a flashback and we see Marcus's face before we see the Hound, it'd be less weak, but you know, it's a fun idea, but it's not happening. Another on that sort of short list of absolutely not happening, but just gotta throw them in there for fun, is Ren's parents, particularly his father more than his mother, just because he was off screen, whereas she definitely got crushed. It'd be interesting to have Ren meet them again, but Salem also again has no reason to have made the Nuclevi grab random guy from random city, so again it's illogical but just kind of fun. Again, being just a face we know is his really only qualification for being here. I will put up another one real quick, and it's the one that I've seen sort of the most floated around in the comments that isn't like people we know, and that is quote-unquote unnamed Cinder predecessor. Now this would make sense it's kind of why I included Tok. She seems like the OG Tyrion more than the OG Cinder, given her assassin role, but she would fit as the young female requirement for the powers. Assuming around Salem's table over the years she keeps generals with similar sort of skills, someone to sort of head different departments of things she needs. But yeah, unnamed Cinder predecessor is a good idea in theory. but without a face to put to it, it's a pretty bad reveal. Reveals aren't reveals if you don't recognize the face. It'd work for scaring Cinder, but everyone's shocked reaction at seeing who it was wouldn't translate to us, the audience, because we wouldn't know who that is. But what I will say is that if we do get a second half of Cinder's backstory, and we meet someone who used to be on Salem's council, who is effectively Cinder's predecessor, then that'd be a good chance for this reveal. So look out for that. If we do get that second half, and we do meet someone who fits the bill, maybe they're sort of like Cinder's friend, you know, Cinder goes into Salem's care at a pretty young age, at that 15, and is sort of raised with a friend over the years who then is apparently dead, then that idea definitely goes up in stock. You know, that the chance of it being them goes up rapidly if that were to occur. So that's the caveat on that idea. And there is one more name I need to slot in here with the people we don't know, but who is actually kind of a contender given the right circumstances. Just sort of like the Cinder predecessor, there is a good chance this one can happen given certain things happen in the show, and that's someone whose face we could see if we get another flashback in the development with Oz and Hazel, and that's Gertrude Reinhardt. We can't reveal it now because we don't have a face, but if it did happen, it would really shake up Hazel, as you can imagine. File this under my never-ending quest to make Hazel something. Again, it's pretty illogical. Salem wouldn't have picked her at random. The only way is maybe recognizing Hazel's potential to be turned against Oz or something, so she targets Gretchen, but that's a real stretch. It's more scheming and something resembling a plan, so it would make Salem seem smart or conniving, I guess, but it is still pretty random when you think about it logically. Maybe a chance to rescue his sister, or the fact Salem has kept this from him and kept her in torment and, you know, didn't even give her the release of death could be really something for Hazel, and if you wanted to flip him, it might actually almost work a lot better. That could be something, but also you then get the idea of perhaps Hazel offering himself up to take her place if possible. That could be interesting. Again, a lot of things would have to combine for this to work. You know, it's a long shot, but if Hazel does get a flashback, if we get Hazel's backstory and we get that Gretchen stuff and you know who that is, then again, her stock goes up as a potential person to be in there. Also, getting Hazel to perhaps having to kill his sister, you know, out of mercy, that could be a big moment and a big sort of bit of misery for the character. If we don't have a face, it's not worth it, but it's a fun one to think about. Next up, I'll throw one in here for fun because it's one I've seen in the comments and one I did think of myself as like a super wild card, just for the silliness of it. Carden Winchester. Now that's super long shot. Again, there's no motivation, there's no reason, but he's alive and we know who he is. Those are his qualifications here. We've seen quite a few early volume references so far with like Cinder's arrows, the stuff about John lying to get into Beacon, we've seen Glinda and Shopkeep's cameos, so if you want another callback, then it'd be interesting. Now yeah, again, I don't expect it to actually be him, but if we're doing the discussion, let's do the discussion. One thing I find interesting about that idea is putting Jean face to face with him again, especially in that kind of state. All this time later, after all his growth, to fight for Carden, to want to save him as a person, to put the past so far behind him and show so much growth as a person. Jean isn't a petty person, it's not really his personality, but it'd be a nice contrast to show where they started and where they are now. It's not really worth it overall compared to who else it could be, but it's just one of those things that does have storytelling value if you wanted to go that route. Also, just things as they are now, with the Hound apparently being sent after Penny, and everyone from John and Yang and them being the ground team that's out there right now. If we were to take it right now, there's a chance that they might run into each other again. You know, they had the initial confrontation with the Hound and they might have a second one. So if it's going to be related to characters, oftentimes it'll be the characters who have most interactions with it, and at the moment that's Jean and crew and perhaps the Aesops and Winter. Like, there's a good chance they'll run into the Hound again, and also they ran into the Hound the first time, Jean's crew, so there is a little bit of value there, but, you know, again, it's very unlikely. Now let's move up to some actual contenders, people we know with faces, names, and characters. First up, everyone's favorite topic of discussion, Pyrenikos. Look, guys, I know there's a big contingent that want her back, but if you really want my biggest argument against it, it's not even what did it undo, or that they don't need it. Really, the biggest problem with this one is that she was disintegrated. There's no body, there's no host, there's nothing left. To resurrect it, you're talking god-level magic, and even Salem doesn't have that. She also has no care for who Pyrrha is or investment in that character like we do. She's not watching the show. So to her, there's no real way this works, like there's no sort of logic to it. I'm sorry if you really want that. It'd be fun, I guess, but it's probably the most illogical. Seeing people we don't recognize is bad enough, but if there's literally not even a body left, then it's just silly. You can't even pretend that they survived. Next up is Rhodes, who as you can guess is the late inclusion to this list. Now he faces a lot of the same issues as the others. He should be dead, Salem has no investment in him, she had no way and no reason to get to his body where it was left, she probably didn't know about him for a long time after that. The only get out of jail free card here is if he didn't die, and she got to him later after learning about him from Cinder, if he was targeted after that. I'm not going to put the stepmother or stepsister on the list because they're less important, and at the least the stepmother, her death is more confirmed with the neck crush. However, these wounds are pretty bad, but in anime terms, survivable if you needed it for drama. So despite all those factors making it unlikely, it could be very fun to face Cinder with her past, that decision, and perhaps that moment she regretted. And that link could be incredibly interesting to explore potentially now we have that backstory. Again, it's super unlikely, but its repercussions could be really great. Again, RWBY as a show has the same volume issue often, where things often only really matter in the volume they're brought up in. Cinder's big important line was just in this volume and it's already been paid off of what it means. So that is sort of the same issue Rhodes could be in. He's been introduced now, so maybe his payoff will be here as well if he extends past just that backstory episode. It's not probable, but it's not outside RWBY's writing style to do it, so don't totally write it off as impossible. At the very least, he definitely qualifies for discussion for this list. If other people that are supposed to be dead are on here, then he counts too. Another one I've seen in discussion more recently, and that's Leo Lionheart. That's an interesting one. Disregard they confirmed he's dead, because that never means anything. It can be whatever they want it to be if they change their minds. I do like the idea to a degree. I think they said that in their headcanon he got stabbed through the spine and the head or something, but if we just go with spine, it'd be interesting if this sort of acts as a horrible mechanism to allow him movement, and it's basically just puppeting him with its own kind of horrific implications. That's kind of fun. There's also some faunus prejudice, sick joke irony to that, turning him into an actual sort of animal, literally modeled and named after a hound. Again, no idea how she got the body, why she would bother to get the body, why she moved it, how she got it across country. Again, big stretches here. Seems kind of pointless for her to do that, but it's that thing of why pick any of these people, honestly. If it can be anyone, why didn't she just go grab the nearest person to her domain just off the street and put them in there? If it's just a mind to be a host, then it doesn't matter who it is. It's dramatic irony and payoff for us, right? So that's where you have to suspend your disbelief and it's a show. So this being some kind of sick punishment might work, it might feed into some malevolence for Salem, for it not just being anyone but making it a point to punish someone with this, setup. Also, if she wants it to hurt other characters or use against them, but no one's really connected to Lionheart, unfortunately, for that argument. So here it is. I don't think it's that likely. Another thing in its favor, though, is the Hound is relatively new. Salem has either hidden it from everyone until now, for however long that was, or she's only created it recently, meaning the host is someone more recent, and because Cinder had no idea what it was, and Leo's death coincides with when she parted ways with Salem. We don't know if the others on the team know really the Hound, or if it's just their first time seeing it too relatively recently, or if they saw it at the base, we never saw it ourselves. So those sort of issues are things that feed into what it may or may not be, depending when it was created, or if Salem has just hidden it away for some reason. But now we move on to the big three, the ones people really want it to be, or would hate it to be, depending on your stance. These are the ones you knew would be here, so let's get going. First one up, Adam Taurus. Okay, so this one has floated around quite a bit, obviously. First up, for points towards it, is it also lines up with Cinder being away from Salem. So if the Hound is a new creation with a newer host, rather than something simply being hidden away for so long, there is potential there. Now, Adam should not have survived this. Not seeing a body or not rule, it doesn't matter. These are two complete puncture wounds all the way through the chest, through the lungs. The blades are removed, so you immediately start bleeding, not just out but into your lungs. Then a multi-story fall, there's no aura, no protection, onto rocks, probably shattered spine and ribs off this rock, and into rushing water to immediately start drowning. To me, it's so dead. Just so dead. But if we're pushing the bounds of what's possible, and the Hound exterior is basically meshed with him to keep him alive, somehow it could be a thing. Now, none of it makes sense, at all. He couldn't have lived very long, he shouldn't have been able to move, he's bleeding, he's drowning. I can't imagine climbing to survival, but we'll give it license that somehow he did. pulled himself up onto a shore. Again, there doesn't even seem to be shores here, it's all cliffs. Where did he go to? There's just no real way it should have worked. But in my mind, you can do the Palpatine Anakin on the riverbank moment. Salem using her grim magic to keep Adam alive and ship him back for the experiment. Except, how was anyone, let alone Salem, there? Why? There was Grimm attacking. Did one just pick him up and bring him back? Why would it have orders to do that? Why would it think to do that? If they push it even further and claim he was more okay and could walk after all this and didn't just bleed out and made it any kind of distance, that's pretty stretched, and I'm kind of disappointed with that explanation and that level of hand-waving, but you know, we just have to really push our disbelief if they go in there and then say he, went back to her or back to someone? Because I still can't reason how she got him, but if he survived and I guess wanted to go somewhere to survive, I mean, he did know Salem was a thing, but it's a big stretch. But if we move past that also, if it was him, like with Lionheart, there is that cruel irony there of being turned into an actual obedient animal. It's literally everything Adam would despise, be insulted by, and hate. So that's pretty interesting for irony. Salem at least knows who Adam is and thought him somewhat useful, so that helps his chances of relevancy. But also I'll add in that this is where some storytelling points in this volume so far don't really support it. If it was going to be Adam, you'd want to do something like have the Hound be around Blake, perhaps attacking her more or being distracted by her or chasing her over the others while it's on a mission. They could do that in Atlas now, but it feels like something you'd build to, you know, something you'd have sprinkled in. You'd want the host spirit to sort of be cracking through just a touch, despite not having any real control over what it's doing. You'd want those little bits of flavor there to make it, you know, pay off and satisfying. Everyone who wants Adam's redemption, you could do a thing where despite everything Blake and the others think of Adam and hate him and everything he's put them through, this semi-death torture as a hopeless puppet could be too much and they'd put him down to end his misery. You know, it's still humane. Maybe even get Adam speaking out to them and asking to be killed, apologizing, begging, etc. You could do that. If you did do that, they'd have to kill him. You can't make our heroes that cruel to leave him. That's just beyond what you would put into your main characters. So it would have to be the redemption route if you want to do that. I'm not sure that they really want to do that. Rooster Teeth in general, I'm saying. I'm sure there'd be lots of yelling about it in the fandom, about abuses and all the issues that go with all that kind of thing. And, you know, there is narrative impact there to affect the characters, that's true. I just don't think it's a great idea for all the issues it would cause and the discussions it caused. Probably you don't want that surrounding your show again, like, you know, promoting it when you didn't have to. It's going to cause problems, so you probably don't want that at Rooster Teeth. But it is an idea you could actually weave into the plot. It's a real stretch, but there is a decent amount you could do with it with the characters if you wanted to invite those discussions and do something with that character. So we'll leave it there. Next one up is definitely the most popular one alongside the one everyone jumped to, and that's Roman Torchwick. I definitely see this one the most through my comments. The main points are that his death is weak. He's based somewhat on the candlestick, so get it, haha, he's like a tool now. And also people just really want him to return, and they really want Neo to turn even more than that, so this is what they should do, right? It's not really a theory with a lot of evidence so much as it's painting what people really want to happen. People want Roman's death to be better, and people want Neo to switch sides. I get that. It's not a bad fan motivation, so let's cover it. First up, how sensible is it? Well, not very. Basically, Salem wouldn't care. She didn't know who Neo was, and even though she's Roman's underling, I don't think she would even know who Roman was either, honestly. Or at least anything more outside of just someone Cinder got to work for her. So what? It seems like something that would more just be left in Cinder's hands to handle. Even if she really did know who he was, I doubt she'd be invested enough in him to use him as the base for the Hound. Like, why him? I don't see her motivation for it. So, most people really don't like Roman's death, and admittedly it wasn't executed as well as it could have been with the sort of ironic cutoff to what he was saying. But I'm curious why Roman getting Eden translates to him being transported across the world and used for the Hound. Eden is still usually pretty dead. Now there's other theories like that he survived, it's always been a theory, that he either burst out of the Grim himself or it burst in the explosion and he made the jump and survived somehow, or he rode the ship down and jumped off at the last minute and survived somehow. Those theories have been around forever. and whatever explanation. Okay, we'll go with it. Then you circle back to some of the other arguments that are more along the Adam line of thinking of like, okay, so he's injured, how does that translate to him getting to Salem? If he was down and out, why would a Grimm be instructed or think to grab him and take him all the way back across the world? Or if he was up, why would he go himself? It's not impossible, I'm just trying to find the least strenuous and most satisfying link, and it's pretty hard. Some people seem to think he was eaten and it flew him there. I think that's pretty silly. And why would it? And, you know, also it got kicked into a ship immediately and started exploding. I think that Grimm, at least, you can say is pretty dead, so he'd have to get out a different way. So on the plausibility, it's pretty weak. All I can think is there was whoever got Cinder out after whatever happened. That is my best explanation. He either got tagged along with or recovered with what happened to Cinder and the people that got her out and got her back after the Silver Eyes incident. Okay, so we'll go with that. So now we're at him being the Hound. Let's look at what people really want, and that's the Neo reaction. So we expect the turn there, and it's fair. I think it'd be for a rescue operation, probably. That's where her loyalties lie, is with Roman, for sure. So I'd be worried she'd try to kill Salem, and that would be her death. But luckily, in the universe right now, the Hound and Cinder are being sent for Penny, so she's not right by Salem. That should mean Neo's going with Cinder as well. So if that's the turn, it'd be really nice, away from Salem's court. Especially if RWBY is there for the fight. If it was me, I'd have Neo absolutely wrecking RWBY because we want to see that fight anyway at some point, and that's her motivation now, is to get revenge at RWBY. And then perhaps you have like a Silver Eyes moment where someone else is in trouble, or for whatever reason her Silver Eyes go off. Everyone is blinded and the Hound takes a big hit. It doesn't die, but perhaps it's like half petrified or gets smashed, and so it's half open, and then you can see inside and you see Roman. Then he's retaken by the goop and Neo flips sides. It'd be pretty powerful, especially if Neo did something like help up RWBY to her feet even though she just knocked her down and was about to kill her, and then charged at Cinder or the Hound or something. There's a lot of possibilities there. The only big issue is that it's development only for Neo. She is the only one who will really care. RWBY and co might be surprised to see Roman, but really it's only to flip Neo. Despite my undying love for Neo, she isn't central to any of this story, really. She's a fun wildcard. So it'd feel rather strange to me that they'd put such a big plot point revolving around her. We also have to accept that flipping Neo good is probably setting up her death almost certainly. There's only two possibilities. She dies or somehow rescues Roman or something and they run away together. That's really the only two endings. I've accepted long ago that Neo will probably end in death. You know, and if you want to get Salem to secure her villain role, then having her kill fan favorite Neo might be a good way to do it, if this all lines up. So we'll chalk it up to unlikely but interesting. The timeline somewhat works. The setup is kinda weak, the impact is overall kinda weak, but it's quite fun. One other positive I'll give it is that it fits that the Hound sort of feels like it wasn't planned from the start. It feels like an addition to just this volume they came up with when writing it. So, you know, there's a good chance that if it is that it leans into this. What I mean is I don't know if the Hound, I really doubt the Hound or something like it was Monty's idea, unless it's the later idea we're going to bring in, but it doesn't feel like something they planned out on the roadmap. So that's my assumption anyway, and it feels like, well, Neo we sort of know is the same thing. They weren't really planning to bring her back, it was more fan demand. So the fact she was reintroduced sort of as an outside idea, putting those elements together if the Hound was also an outside idea and that's Roman, it could be a good way to handle those elements in a satisfying way, but get them out of the way because they also don't really tie into the big overall plan, so it could work. But we have to cover the last one, the one everyone's talking about, the one I've mentioned as well, and it's Summer Rose. This will be sort of, if it is going to be Summer, there'll be a bit of a theory in here on how I think it works. This is the biggest section, obviously, because we got to talk about it. Whether some people hate this idea, it's fine. I just got to cover it. So, she's definitely the popular one. She's definitely the one that has the most traction with theories and the like. It's pretty obvious why she's been talked about for so long. Again, like everything, she's definitely dead, right? That statement means nothing. So I think the reason that she's so promising for this is that all the little bits start sort of lining up. She very well could have been taken by Salem since we know they had an interaction and contact, or at least Salem claims that. You know, she didn't have a reason to say what she said, but she did claim she'd met Summer, so you have confirmation from the bad guy's side. So then you also have issues like her mentioning it at all. Usually for storytelling, you look for things being mentioned because you want them fresh in your audience's mind to a degree. And Salem doing that does sort of ring that bell. She says she had contact with the mom. She doesn't say she killed her explicitly, and then you have a mystery thing turn up that could have a person in it. It really does line up. And then there's circumstances like it not having eyes, you know. And then, given what we've seen before, things like blinding Summer if she was still around sounds like what you'd do if you were going to keep her around for safety reasons for Salem and Silver Eyes and all that. So it does quite add up. Also, like I said before, it has stronger ties to our main plot, unlike with Neo. Sure, we love Neo, but she's a side character. But Summer is the driving force behind the original motivations of our main character. So for plot, you've definitely stepped up the repercussions and impact there if it is Summer. There's no argument, it's simply a stronger place for the plot. There's also less leaps in logic to make. Also, the idea of having her kill her mom, or freeing her and somehow getting her back to Tai, blind or not, is a touching kind of idea. Or heartbreaking, depending on how that goes. Also, as a kind of bonus, if she was blind and then they do recover her, she could get the Maria surgery eventually. Post-series in the future. And honestly, that would make Maria feel like a more useful character to have introduced that concept as well, to have a better payoff later for someone else. She wouldn't feel as sort of randomly slotted in as she sort of is now. It won't look sweet for the full end credits for Summer to have a big chunky metal rig on her face, but that's a minor overall point. But let's be fair and discuss the negatives here as well. First up is again the timeline. RWBY couldn't talk yet when Summer didn't come back, so that's a lot of time for Salem to have held on to this. Did she keep Summer Rose a prisoner this whole time? Why? Did she make the Hound ages ago and hide it away? Why? Because people like Cinder didn't recognize it, so why'd she hide it and keep it a secret? Why not just have it patrolling her castle or by her side? And yeah, the overall why of the whole thing sort of lingers. The actual answer as to why we haven't seen it is probably because they hadn't come up with it yet, but that's not an in-universe explanation, is it? Which is then compounded by Cinder's words that she doesn't recognize it, so you've confirmed that it's not just like we didn't see it as an audience, but it was around. But I do have a theory as to how it could work. I don't know if this is other people's theories. I haven't really looked into the Summer Rose theory much because I just sort of stick to my own lane and, if I have a theory, I'll just say it. So I don't know what other people's reasoning is, but I do have one for you. And the idea I thought is perhaps that something about Silver Eyes or Silver-Eyed people inherently make them more resistant to Grimm. So they're not totally destroyed by it, and you can strike a balance. That's sort of almost logic. I'd actually buy it if that's why Salem wants RWBY to make another Hound or experiment with, because you need Silver-Eyed DNA for this to kind of work. If you tried to put that kind of aggressive, grim substance on a normal person, it would just totally consume them and you'd get nothing. Or maybe just a mindless usual Grimm. Now, personally, I've never liked putting all this sort of extra weight on the concept of Silver Eyes. I know inevitably it'll end up being more important, but I actually just like leaving it as a little extra special power our main character has that just does what they say it does, rather than being the answers to all the big questions and a key narrative thing. But striking a balance with a Grimm host, since it's based around destroying Grimm, I could actually buy that. That tracks for me as not being too overpowered or far-fetched or, a completely new angle to the thing. If you take an aggressive Grimm substance like what could be the base for this Hound, that would probably kill anyone normally, and then apply it to a person with a genetic ability that is made to harm that type of entity, and then you can kind of strike a balance between them, make sort of a hybrid of both parts, then that's sort of okay to me. That the destruction and aggressiveness sort of can level out and you find a balance where you get a creature in the middle. And in that case, you might not even have Summer blinded. It might have like goo going into her eyes or something. Or you just need her DNA because it's in her blood. Depends if you're doing science or magic, right? Personally, I'd actually be really happy with that explanation because it means Cinder can't be a Hound because she's not a Silver-Eyed person. Because personally, I still hate that whole Cinder being controlled by Grimm thing, or lately that's evolved into her becoming the next Hound. I really hate that. So I'd take that off the table, so I'd be happy about it. Now, we do also need to look at plot. Would reintroducing Summer benefit the plot? We might have relief from RWBY that she's alive, or horror that she has to be put down and what's happened, and there's a lot of questions there. Would it break her totally to see Summer again, or to see her lose her again, or, do we want to see that? Is it too unbelievable to rescue her? RWBY still has the save the world motivation anyway, but reintroducing Summer and what we do with that outcome has a lot of implications. Do we have time for them to handle it, or will it detract too much from the overall driving force of our plot? It very well could. I'm not totally against it, but I'd be worried about how they balance the outcome, be it misery or joy concerning RWBY especially, and the plot as a whole. That's my real concern. Rescuing Summer shouldn't become our new end goal, because we have Salem, we have the end of the world to deal with. That should be the end goal. But rescuing Summer also shouldn't be the immediate goal, because we have Atlas to save and lots of other things to do. Killing Summer would be extreme with the fallout, but then we do have all the fallout of the Atlas stuff to go through as well. So balancing it in might be hard. However, the idea that people have talked about, and I talked about a long time ago, that if Raven and Ty and others portal in to help, that could be a quick fix. They portal in, and Ty and Raven sort of rescue Summer back out portaling somewhere else, and she can be at home with Ty and we continue our story onward. Put her in a coma, or needing to adapt to her blindness condition, or whatever else. Just put her on the back burner until later volumes so we can stay on target. That's probably the best result if you want to pull this off. Summer's reappearance should also have a huge impact on Crow, and probably a positive one if everything goes okay. So that could be a big advancement for him, unless it goes terribly of course, and none of us want to really see that, especially with Crow. But also Raven, I feel like, she'd have to turn around slightly with that kind of revelation, no matter what she seems to think of Summer. It'd have to resonate with their history. So that's where I stand on Summer. She's a really good candidate for it. She perhaps has the least weird questions and kind of an explanation in my theory, but the timeline is still weird, none of it's perfect, so that's sort of the end of it. Okay, so that wraps it up for kind of the actual candidates. I'll toss in what I did think would be fun if it was somehow Ozpin's body, just using the stimulated host brain without the soul there. It makes no sense. They didn't recover a body. Salem wasn't sure he was dead. It's silly. It's not happening. I just thought it'd be a cool visual to have Oscar see old Oz in the goo with Oz in his head reacting. Just be interesting. But, it's a weird tangent and it's not happening. Real quick, I'll say people not appearing on this list who aren't really accounted for are simply not here because it's too much of a stretch. People like Port, Oobleck, Carly, just people we don't have actual accounts for. People like that are so unlikely, I don't want to waste your time with a paragraph on each explaining why. Again, nothing's impossible, but let's skim over them for everyone's sakes. Timelines, relevance, motivation. They're so nonsensical, I think it's safe to skip it. So, with all that said, this video was supposed to be a quick dip into the idea and instead took way longer than expected and got a lot bigger and bigger. But anyway, if you liked it, give us a like, share it if you think others would like it too, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more. Until next time, remember, you may think bringing back Ruby's mum is a bad idea, but no matter what issues it raises, what questions you have, and the horrible things Salem must have done in order for this resurrection to work, at the end of the day, one thing is for sure. She still did a better job than the RWBY brothers. My name is Rigger, hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.